All right, I'm going to ask if everybody can take their seat. We're going to get started in 1 minute. I'd like to take a moment to welcome everybody to this Committee on Ordinance public hearing on November 2nd, 5 o'clock. I'm Councilman Nick Narducci. I'd also like to ask the clerk to take the roll, please.
Chairman Narducci,
Oh, I'm here.
Vice Chairwoman Castillo. Present. Councilwoman Harris.
Present.
Councilor Miller. Present. Councilman Espinal.
Present.
You have 5 present and none absent. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'd also like to make mention that we got Councilman Gonzalez with us and Councilman Salvatore.
So noted.
Thank you. Okay, Sarge, do we have a list? Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 1 for the public hearing into the record?
Petition from Dylan Conley Esquire on behalf of Kalisbeck K. Malakoff requesting a zone change for the property located on Assessors Plat 20, Lot 308, 26 Ringgold Street, and Assessors Plat 28, Lot 271, 22 Ringgold Street, from R3 to C1 with restrictions as follows. Residential uses only, limited to 2-family, 3-family, or multifamily dwellings. 7 housing units shall be designated workforce housing, subject to the annual rent cap restriction set by Rhode Island Housing for 120% area median income.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I'm going to ask Bobby Azar. State your name and your position for the record, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Robert Azar, Deputy Director of the Department of Planning and Development. I testified about this last time around when this was originally brought forward. You have the recommendation from the City Plan Commission. As I stated before, the City Plan Commission recommended that the council adopt the council change this lot not to C1 but to R4, recognizing that the commission was assuming that this would be zoned R4 under the pending changes to R4, which the council has not passed yet. So I just like to put that into the record that it's not our intention to sort of presuppose that that's going to happen. Any change to R4 would be contingent on this zoning change passing. On the other hand, the petition, as stated, to change this to C1 with restrictions to just residential uses, that is a practice that the council has engaged in before. It's certainly allowed by the Enabling Act. We're trying to move away from it with the new R4 zoning, but given that this was filed before that change was introduced, we certainly wouldn't have any objection if you approved it as it's written. The one thing that I would ask is that the restrictions listed, the first 2 bullets, residential uses only, limited to 2-family, 3-family, or multifamily dwellings, we think that those should carry through to the ordinance to be noted on the zoning map. The third condition that speaks about workforce housing, we don't think that would be appropriate to have as a condition of the rezoning or to note on the zoning map. So if you were to be inclined to move forward with this, to rezone this to C1, we would ask that language be stricken from this petition or from the ultimate ordinance.
Thank you, Bob. Councilor Miller, yes.
Thank you, Bob. Can you explain the last comment you just made?
Right. So that would be sort of a form of what we call contract zoning, where it's kind of like a quid pro quo. I don't know that it's necessarily contrary to state law, but it's certainly something that we've never done before in zoning. It's not part of our typical practice. And on top of it, there's no indication that there would be a restriction placed on this property by any sort of outside agency. So we don't know that there would be any way to enforce any kind of restriction like this. Typically, this is done through a covenant that's recorded against the deed, not something that's put on the zoning map.
Thank you. One more question.
Yes.
So it says residential uses only. Is there an amendment that we could make that would conform the sound ordinance? Also be Residential
Yes,
use only.
yes. As a matter of fact, thank you for bringing that up. And I know that that has come up in the past because there are certain provisions of the city's noise ordinance that don't apply within commercial zones. So you could certainly add a, just think about this. I think you could add a language that says notwithstanding the commercial zoning, this property is subject to the
Yeah.
noise ordinance regulations of the residential zones.
Yep.
Something to that effect.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Bob? Bob, thank you as always. Counselor Conley, could you state your name and your position for the record, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dylan Conley, legal counsel on behalf of the applicant. I presented on this the other evening in the other public hearing. I don't have any additional or new information. I really just wanted to make myself available to the committee if there were questions or concerns. It's the R4 is a bit of a risk on our end because it doesn't exist in law just yet. We did apply for the C1 because of the timeline of all this. I can promise you I've told all my clients to not apply for that C1 because of the R4 expectations that are current. Well, expectations is too strong of a term, but concept that's in front of the board. But wanted to make myself available.
Any questions for Counselor Conley? Hearing none. Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you.
At this time, that completes the public hearing. I'm sorry, yes.
So I would like to propose that it read residential uses only, notwithstanding the commercial zoning. This property is subject to the noise ordinance.
Thank you. Okay, so at this time, that ends the public hearing. Oh, well. Right, the amendment was made by Councilor Miller. Second. And seconded by Councilman Castillo. All in favor? Opposed? Ayes have it. Now that's the end of the public hearing. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Motion made by Councilor Miller, seconded by Councilwoman Castillo. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. We're going to be meeting right here with the meeting upon the rise. Give us about 5 minutes and we're going to get started. So hurry up. Ordinance Committee meeting, again on Wednesday, November 2nd at 5:15. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Narducci,
Here.
Vice Chairwoman Castillo. Present. Councilwoman Harris. Present. Councilor Miller. Present. Councilman Espinal. You have 5 present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Would you be kind enough to read item number 1 into the record?
Item number 1 is an ordinance amending Chapter 15 Motor Vehicles and Traffic,
Carissa.
Article 11, Motorized Vehicles of the City of Providence Code of Ordinances to add Section 15-133, Electric Vehicles.
And Madam Clerk, am I right to understand that there's a substitution also? One. Right. So can I have a motion to make the substitution item A?
So moved.
1A. Motion was made by Councilman Castillo, seconded by Councilman Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Is there anybody here to speak on item number 1? Councilman Gonzalez?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for the opportunity to speak on this. This is a forward-thinking piece of legislation that incentivizes electric vehicle charging infrastructure for developers who wish to incorporate this in their development projects. The Biden administration recently passed the bipartisan infrastructure law, which will accelerate the national EV charging network, with over 7.5 million allocated to cities and towns. And this law is going to be crucial to leveraging these kinds of funds and giving developers the option and incentive to build this kind of infrastructure of the future in the city of Providence. This was vetted with the legal department. Other municipalities have already been doing this, and I want to thank you and all of our colleagues and the members of this committee for your support and your leadership on this matter. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I also want to thank you, Councilman Gonzalez, on your leadership on this matter. Anybody have any questions for the councilman? Do we have any comments from the law department? Can you step up to the mic, please? State your name for record.
Thank you. Lisa Dinnerman, Senior Assistant City Solicitor. The Solicitor's Office has reviewed and okayed this, and we support this legislation. I just wanted to note that there's a companion bill. I don't know if it has a separate number, but it relates to, okay, so I'm actually speaking to the next one then. Would you like me to do that now? Okay.
Thank you. And at this time, then, I'd like to have a motion to pass as substituted to the full council. Motion made by Councilman Castillo, seconded by Councilwoman Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, would you be kind enough to read item number 2 into the record?
Item number 2 is an ordinance amending Chapter 15 Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Article 1 in general of the Providence Code of Ordinances to add Section 15-17.2 Electric Vehicles.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Once again, Councilman Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This matter is still being reviewed by the Finance Department, so I would ask that the committee continue this matter, and we're going to continue to do due diligence on this portion of the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Can I have a motion to continue item number 2?
So move.
Motion made by Councilwoman Costello,
Second.
second by Councilwoman Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Oops, I'm sorry. Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 3 into the record?
Item number 3 is an ordinance amending Chapter 18.5 Police, Section 2, Providence External Review Authority of the Providence Code of Ordinances.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do we have anybody from Para that wants to speak on the matter? Director? If you can come up to the mic and state your name and your position for the record, please.
Ferenc Caroli, Executive Director of Para. Good evening, Chairman, council members. Thank you for the opportunity. Mostly, I'd just like to emphasize that the changes that we've made, recommended to be made to the ordinance are regarding the operation of Para to be able to actually perform its mandate under the ordinance, the creating ordinance, and which is to conduct independent oversight of the police department through the civilian board. And I think the most important piece of that ordinance that would be part of the items to discuss this evening is the access to information, the cooperation piece, allowing Para to have user access to the police records, to be able to actually have direct access to documentation so that we can conduct oversight of current investigations, audit oversight of completed internal investigations, and conduct our own formal investigations under the ordinance for complaints that are received by Para from the community. And the big key to that factor is independent oversight. And for it to be independent, you need to have access to information. And I make the analogy that if you're doing an investigation and the subject of the investigation is able to hand to you what they think is relevant to your investigation and edit or redact information or even withhold certain information because they don't think it's relevant to your investigation, then your investigation is really not a true investigation, and it certainly is not independent. It's dependent on the subject. The other changes that are in the ordinance that we recommended are mostly administrative changes that have to do with the continuity of operations for Para. For example, in the instance of members not being reappointed immediately by the council, instead of them going into a status where they are inactive and can't vote and the board kind of goes to a standstill, they would continue in their positions until either replaced or reappointed. So those are the types of changes that are administrative and so to allow continuity of operations and not have disruption to services provided. So other than that, if there's any questions, obviously I'd like to make myself available to answer your concerns about any of the changes.
Well, first of all, let me say thank you to you and your board for the hard work you guys put into this, and also to the Providence Police Department, because I heard you guys are working pretty closely on this particular ordinance. I have a couple of quick questions. Does anybody know that if item number 5I has gone before the Finance Committee as of yet, and that's making the budget 1.5% of the police budget?
I don't believe it's been before the Budget Committee,
So
Chairman.
it has not been before the Finance Committee?
It has not.
Okay. And then I guess the other issue I see here is the subpoena powers. Can anybody explain that to me a little further?
I could take a crack at it, sure. So, I mean, one of the reasons that was put in there was, as you know, a lot of the work behind the scenes on this was in conjunction with the board and their years of experience. Some members of the council were very instrumental in the creation of Para at its inception. And one of the sticking points for the board was that they felt that they do not have the authority to enforce cooperation with their operations. And that was recommended as a change to allow the board to actually be able to subpoena police officers into hearings if necessary, if there was an issue with them actually cooperating with Para's operations, as well as for documentation. I think the cooperation piece with the access to records eliminates there ever needing, likely to be a need for a subpoena for records with being able to have access to them. But that doesn't mean there won't be an instance where certain documents would not be kept in an electronic management system that would therefore still need to be requested and delivered by the police department. And so the process now would require Para to go to the council to request the council to get involved and issue a subpoena for these Para matters and wait for that process to go through. And then, so it's more of a matter of trying to create an efficiency for operations, but it's not something that's critical to the mission, to be honest. You know, I mean, I know that in the past, the council has exercised its power of subpoena for Para's operations and has done that. And so there's no question that you would
A
do
few
that.
different times.
Right.
No. Because I wouldn't be supportive of seeing that changed, to be honest, but that's my own opinion. Does anybody else have any questions for the director before I ask Major Lanny to speak? Counselor Miller.
I am curious about this item number C at the bottom of the additions. It says, no member shall, among other things, be appointed to any partisan organization in any city or town. I'm curious about like what an example of an appointment to such an organization. Just spell it out.
Of a partisan organization, let's say like the,
Democratic Town Committee or something.
yeah, like Democratic National Party or, you know, right. Yes, certain. Thank you.
All set, Counselor? Thank you. Does any of my other colleagues besides the committee have any questions on this particular matter? John, you want to speak on this matter?
Nothing. Just very quickly in response
Can
to
you
the
come
question
up to
from
the
the
podium, please?
councilwoman.
Come up to the podium, please.
Yeah, all right, hang on.
Get up.
Thank you.
Thank
need
you.
me over that.
Thank you, Director.
Making me run around. Oh, so just very quickly to the question around the item C and kind of the all of the items coming from item C. For the members of the council, you're likely familiar with the edits that were made to the Juvenile Hearing Board that we did. Essentially, what we're trying to do is move away from using these boards and commissions as a launching pad for political campaigns or something like that. It's really designed to serve the community, work with the community. It's not a political organization. That's not what it's there for. I'll say we've had some very good success with the Juvenile Hearing Board so far with these changes. And basically, we're kind of using that language as best practice and trying to implement that with the Para Board as well, as both Para and the Juvenile Hearing Board reside under the City Council. And therefore, we want to kind of maintain continuity in how we handle all appointments, not having different standards for different boards when it comes to how we vet and approve members. So that's the general concept we were going with that item.
Any questions for Sean? Thank you, Sean, as always. Major? Please. And just state your name and your position, please. Not that we don't know who you are, but.
Thank you, Chairman and council members. My name is Major Kevin Laney of the Providence Police Department, and I'm here about the ordinance, and specifically, we have objections to what the chairman had brought up about subpoena powers and what that means for our internal investigations in the department. So we're concerned about them asking to have officers leave dual statements, which would produce a conflict for them. It may hold up our investigations internally. So we're not able to swiftly address issues of misconduct internally. Our other issue is with Section T, which is about full access or user access to all our databases. You know, we make an effort to really be deliberate and intentional about our data and how we collect it and who has access to it. And we have concerns about past breaches with PERA. Although we've been working great with the new director and the board, we've developed a good relationship on resolving issues. They've had input into some of our policy, which we've made changes on. But that is a major concern for us to give them access to our database. You know, we have redactions we make for the public that we wouldn't be able to do. We track, not all our officers have access to footage in body-worn cameras. We restrict some officers from viewing all incidents in body-worn cameras. And I feel that giving up user access to all our databases would be counterproductive for the police department.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the major? Any questions from my colleagues for the major? Councilwoman Harris.
You heard the director say that, and also, I know we have had a lot of problems in the past, but they also need to be able to make sure that their information is factual, and that's been a problem. I understand I think that's probably practically why this ordinance is before us. Obtaining information. Have there been any difference in change in how you're working together with the director to be able to provide the information? I think that's probably the push behind the subpoena power, is to be able to get any pushback from the police department to provide the information.
Thank you, Councilwoman. No, there hasn't been. Since Director Crowley has been in charge, we've been working with PERA to furnish them with all the information they request from us. He's visited the station to view footage of body-worn cameras that he needed to access to clear some of his complaints. I feel the relationship between us is very good right now, and he will have access to all the information he needs through our leadership at the police department.
Anybody else? Major, thanks so much. Thank you for what you do, and stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
At this point, I don't feel comfortable passing this out tonight, only because of the 1.5% of the police budget goes to PERA, and knowing that that has not been discussed before the Finance Committee. So what I would like to do is have a motion to continue this matter, and to give the director and the police department a little more time to work on the other two issues that were spoke about tonight. So with that being said, can I get a motion to continue item number 3? Motion made by Councilwoman Costello,
Second.
seconded by Councilwoman Harris. All in favor? All opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 4 into the record?
Item number 4 is an ordinance amending Chapter 13 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Providence entitled Housing to add Article 7, Security and Housing Development for the Elderly and Persons with Disabilities.
And we do have 2 letters of testimony, one from Providence Housing and one from Rhode Island Housing, that I'd like to have a motion to accept that Exhibit A for number 4. Motion made by Councilwoman Costello, seconded by Councilwoman Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Councilman Salvatore, would you like to speak on this particular matter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. A year and a half ago, this committee and the full council saw fit to pass what we call the Housing Security Ordinance for buildings that house seniors and persons with disabilities. And that ordinance was worked on with the Providence Police Department and stakeholders in the community, such as property owners and landlords, et cetera. And that was a year and a half ago. We've learned recently that one of the provisions in the ordinance, which requires these property owners to submit security plans to the police department, is not being adhered to. And I spent the summer traveling around parts of the city, learning that many of our residents in these buildings, whether they're privately owned or publicly owned, don't feel safe. And as a body, I think we sent a clear message when we first passed this ordinance that our most vulnerable residents, persons with disabilities, our seniors, they deserve to feel safe just as much as people who are living in luxury apartment buildings. Now, I saw firsthand why folks in these buildings don't feel safe. Folks off the street just walking in, fighting with residents, wandering the buildings, that has to be unacceptable to all of us. And again, I think we have a moral responsibility to make sure that our most vulnerable residents feel just as safe as we do in our homes and in our neighborhoods. So this ordinance, or this amendment to the ordinance, does a few things. First and foremost, it requires these property owners and property managers to secure the buildings with a human being, a security officer or a security guard, 24/7. Now, this was one of the provisions that I originally included in the ordinance more than 2 years ago. Sat down with property owners, sat down with landlords and property managers, and we took that provision out. I heard their concerns, but my biggest concern is that the ordinance is not being adhered to. So we're going to include that provision back in that requires a 24/7 security detail in all of these buildings. Secondly, very similar to the state statute that requires non-property owners to designate an agent for service of process with the Secretary of State's office, the same thing will have to be done for these properties. But the individual will have to be located in the city so that the Providence Police Department or anybody in city government has access to who owns the building. And if there is an issue, they're easily accessible. And finally, we've increased the fine from $150 a day to $500 a day if this ordinance is not adhered to. It saddens me that we have to go this far to make sure that our residents feel just as safe, again, as we do in our homes and in our neighborhoods. They deserve it, and I think we owe it to them to make sure that they feel safe. Now, we talk about crime and public safety, and at times in Providence, people don't feel safe. Sometimes the crime stats don't reflect some of the perceptions that are out there. And if people don't feel safe, then again, I think we have a responsibility as elected officials to make sure that we're adopting policies and local and state laws that make them safe. So again, I hope we have your support on this amendment to the ordinance. I believe that these new enforcement mechanisms will mitigate a lot of what I witnessed this summer. And it's, again, not only happening in private property, but it's happening in public property as well, okay? There is a specific building located in my ward, in Councilman or Chairman Narducci, I know that you're well aware of it, in the North End, Independence House. This is a home or a development that houses people with disabilities. The strangers entering the parking lot and fighting with residents who need a wheelchair to move around their neighborhood. Again, unacceptable. So I'm happy to take any questions, but I think this is pretty straightforward, and I would appreciate, again, your support. Thank you.
And Councilman, I remember going there with you for that meeting, and they're severely handicapped, these people, and they will get robbed and beaten right outside their front doors. Nobody there to help them or protect them. One gentleman, they beat him up so bad that after they were done beating him up, they destroyed his $4,000 wheelchair on him. And luckily enough, if you remember, we were able to reach out to some people to get his wheelchair replaced. So I'm in full support of this ordinance myself, Councilman.
Thank you, Chairman.
Any questions to the Councilman? Councilman Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilman, I just want to express my gratitude and thank you for putting this forth. I think it's very key and important, and thank you for thinking of the most vulnerable and population. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pro Tem.
I just want to echo that.
Thank you, Chairman.
So at this time, I'm going to ask for a motion to pass item number 4 to the full council. Motion was made by Councilwoman Castillo, seconded by Councilman Harris. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Congratulations,
Thank you
Councilman.
all.
Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 5 into the record?
Item number 5 is an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 21 Revenue and Finance, Article 2, Contracts, Purchases, and Sales, Section 21-38.1, Mailing of Checks to Vendors of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Providence.
I just want to comment that I think this one's a pretty easy one. We heard some great testimony during the public hearing, and Sean's going to speak about it for a little bit. Sean?
Yeah, if I could. So just to make sure everyone's aware, so I'm actually joined by Mr. Demont Combs, who's been integral to this whole ordinance proposal. So basically, the current code of ordinances requires that we mail checks to vendors, and that can take some time and is not always the easiest, especially for some smaller vendors, right? If it's only a couple $100, it would be a lot easier to deposit that or to find another way to electronically get that over to them. So that was the request. It's very straightforward in principle. There are some concerns that the treasurer had voiced with us in terms of how to procedurally accommodate that, so the city's not holding on to confidential information like routing numbers and things for any extended periods, and getting the correct details from the vendor to facilitate. So rather than getting overly prescriptive, we're enabling the treasurer to promulgate some rules around how to get this done, but making sure it's clear that yes, we want to be providing flexibility on how vendors are paid. So that's the proposal, again, to make sure that we can electronically convey funds to vendors. And I do have Demont here in case he would like to speak about kind of his experience and why this has been such an important thing. But if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
I would love to have Lamont come up. I know I was welcomed with his presence, with yourself, Sean, on the conversation that we did have. So if you, some brief comments.
Yes, hi.
State your name for the record, though, please.
My name is Demont Combs. I'm a resident in Providence, Rhode Island. I'm also a poet. I've been performing here for over 10 years. This started when I started working with the city, and I did all these about 4 or 5 events, maybe in around 2020, 2021. And I didn't get paid for about 4 to 5 months. In the contract, it stated I would get paid within 10 weeks. So I reached out to my community members and checked to see if anyone else was having this issue, and turns out a lot of people were having this issue. So I went to Arts, Culture, and Tourism, and I said, how can we fix this issue? And she pointed me toward the ordinances. I read the ordinances myself, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Once I discovered that the ordinance was mailing of checks to vendors was actually blocking direct deposit or electronic transfer, I proceeded to figure out any way possible to make that happen. I met with councilmen, I met with Sean, and I met with community members, and we really, really need this to happen. I actually just met with a friend last night who was a part of the Design or Ride program, and they were telling me that they got their check lost in the mail. And this is about, you know, they were getting reimbursed. They actually had to let go of a particular establishment because they were upcoming business. They had to let go of a vendor, and it was actually a Solia business because their check got lost in the mail for reimbursement. So electronic transfer is needed to keep up to date with the needs of society. Thank you.
No, Lamont, thank you. Good job. Any questions for Lamont? Councilor Miller.
Mr. Chair, yeah, I just want to thank you so much for trying to solve a problem, truly, because I think this is a problem, you know, not just for like vendors who are doing events, but it's a problem throughout citywide, and minority contractors you hear very often from smaller women and minority contractors. Payment isn't. All right, so this is like a
Thank you. It's been a long road. It's been about a year, this whole entire process since I started it. Actually, question 4 on the ballot, I actually helped put that through as well, increasing it for vendors to get paid more money. As a vendor myself, I just feel like it's absolutely necessary to, if no one else will step up, then I'll be the one to step up. I'm not paid for anything that I'm doing. I'm going to meetings constantly to make sure these things go by because it's necessary to improve Providence and to make our lives easier as a whole. Anyone else have any questions?
Well said, Councilman. That's my job. I'll
Oh,
ask
sorry.
that. Councilman Gonzalez.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And then I'm just going to make a brief comment. For the last 16 years, whether I was chair or vice chair of the URB committee, urban redevelopment, I used to hear from the administration, and I'm talking about the mayors, you know, what's $5,000? What's $10,000? And my thing to them was always that a $5,000 check to an organization like yours, or a $10,000 check to the organization you were talking about, that's a lot of money. That could keep a program running or shut down. So that $5,000 and $10,000 means a lot for you guys to be operating that small and doing what you're doing should be what they're looking at. And you should be able to get your checks as soon as you submit your paperwork. So again, I want to just say thank you for doing what you did and keep it going.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lamont. With that being said, can I have a motion to pass to the full council item number 5? Motion made by Councilwoman Castillo, seconded by Councilwoman Harris. All in favor? Opposed? Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 6 into the record?
Item number 6 is an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 27 of the Ordinances of the City of Providence entitled The City of Providence Zoning Ordinance approved November 24th, 2014, as amended to change certain text in Articles 2, 4, 5, 8, 9, 12, 13, 14, 16, 18, and 20.
Anybody here to speak on this particular matter? Hey, Councilwoman Anthony, would you please step up to the podium? And good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. First of all, I want to thank Bob Azar and Alexis Thompson for the excellent job they've done on these amendments. I have reviewed them in detail and with them, and am very supportive. But since our meeting way back when, I've had a situation arise in my ward, which would prompt me to ask you to make an amendment on this. And particularly it is regards the section on scoreboards on page 7. Basically, we do allow electronic message signs for scoreboards, but this amendment would allow video capabilities. So my problem is we have, and I think this may be a problem throughout the city. I just haven't had a chance to look at other areas, but in my particular ward, Moses Brown has just installed a new scoreboard, and they had to get permission from CPC. It does have video capability, but of course they're not allowed to use the video capability unless we pass this amendment. The field is located, it's 200 feet from the residential neighborhoods next door. And there is a great concern with the not only the illumination from the video scoreboard, even though it has to be angled away from the residential neighborhoods. Of course, there is going to be a sound component, not within the video capability, but it is going to be a problem in a residential neighborhood where you have these scoreboards located so close. You have heard testimony during the public hearing. I think you may have received letters against this also. And it's not that I don't mind video capability, but I think it's got to have some sort of reasonable restrictions in residential neighborhoods. Because I think that has to be a factor. These neighbors are going to be impacted. And the other thing that's happening is because they are going to have video capabilities, they'll have movie nights, they'll be able to use them, which doesn't sound like a bad idea, but it's going to be more use, more noise. They're going to be renting the fields. They said that during their presentation at CPC, and it's just an increase in use of the field, which may be disruptive to adjacent residential neighborhoods. So I would ask you to consider removing the words "and may convey video" from this amendment, this section M, page 7 of Article 1607. Maybe at a later date, we can come up with some reasonable restrictions in residential neighborhoods, but I would appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. You would like to make a comment, Solicitor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to make any friends here, but it's my job to remind you that first, there's no further public comment. Yes, a council person may make comment here, but also you cannot amend the ordinances at this point without there having to go back, be amended, and have another public hearing. So you tonight, your job is you either vote them up or you vote them down, or you continue it indefinitely. So I know the councilwoman is disappointed, but she perhaps would be happy to hear that many of her constituents were heard at the public hearing on this, and their voices were, their views were expressed to the council, but you cannot make an amendment now.
I didn't think we could. Thank you, Solicitor. But we do have the right to continue the matter, not indefinitely, just to continue it.
You can continue it. If you make any other, if you propose to make any amendments, it has to go start at the beginning. It's going to have to get published for 3 weeks, have another public hearing, and then come back to the committee for passage. So you're going to have to start all over again. It won't get done this year.
No, I know that. All right, well, I'll the motion to continue the matter then. Bobby, did you want to make a comment? Of course you can. I'm sorry I didn't ask you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With all due respect to Councilwoman Anthony, this is an amendment that we've been working on for many months. It advances a lot of initiatives that are incredibly important to the city in terms of our land use policies and in terms of administering the ordinance. I am very well aware of the concerns of constituents in the vicinity of the Moses Brown School with respect to what is happening on the playing fields. Those concerns relate to the fact that Moses Brown has a football field that has grandstands, that has a speaker system, and that has a scoreboard. The preponderance of the complaints that I've heard, and I've been copied on all of the correspondence that has been coming between residents and the school and the councilwoman, these have all related to noise from the speaker system that they have installed, relating to noise as it is permeating the neighborhood. The provision around scoreboards would allow for animated scoreboards, as frankly have been installed in many places around the city already, some of them without proper permits. But what we're trying to do is to create a regulation that keeps up with the modern state of technology with respect to scoreboards. Scoreboards don't make sound. If they do have animation, the provision that we put into place for scoreboards was that they be oriented towards the field of play. In the case of Moses Brown, the scoreboard that they are proposing is in fact oriented towards the field and away from residents. I don't know how to say this, but I ask you from the bottom of my heart to approve this ordinance because of all the good things that it does. If it turns out that there are issues with scoreboard regulations, we can revisit those, but I do honestly feel that we have provisions in this ordinance that safeguard adjoining residences.
Thank you, Bob. All right, with that being said, then can I get a motion to pass this ordinance out of committee and send to the council for a full vote?
So move.
Motion made by Councilwoman Harris.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Castillo. All in favor? Opposed? Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 7 into the record?
Item number 7 is a petition from Kelly Morris Salvatore Esquire on behalf of BFG MARI LLC, requesting a zone change for the property located on Assessor's Plat 78, Lot 454, 550 BZ Street from M-MU-75 to M-1.
This particular project is in my ward. It's a used storage place that's already in existence that they want to add some same type of units to the back part of the property. So with that being said, I'd like to have a motion to pass this ordinance out of committee and send to the council for a full vote.
So move.
Motion made by Councilman Castillo,
Second.
seconded by Councilwoman Harris. All in favor? Opposed? Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 8 into the record?
Item number 8 is a petition from Dylan Conley Esquire on behalf of Kalisbeck K. Malakoff, requesting a zone change for the property located on Assessor's Plat 20, Lot 308, 26 Ringgold Street, and Assessor's Plat 28, Lot 271, 22 Ringgold Street from R3 to C1 with restrictions as follows. Residential uses only, limited to 2-family, 3-family, or multifamily dwellings. 7 housing units shall be designated workforce housing subject to the annual rent cap restriction set by Rhode Island Housing for 120% area median income.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to propose an amendment to match what we did in the public hearing. So residential uses only, notwithstanding the commercial zoning, this property is subject to the noise ordinance of the residential zone, and to eliminate the third bullet.
Councilor Conley, do you want to make any comments or? Okay. So motion was made to approve as amended.
No, that was just the amendment.
Huh?
That was just the amendment.
I thought we already did that earlier.
We have to do it twice.
Motion was amended by Councilor Miller. Can I get a second?
Second.
By Councilor Castillo. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Now,
Can I have a motion to pass as approved as amended to full council made by Councilman Castillo?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Harris. Excuse me. All in favor? Opposed? Ayes have it. You're welcome. Madam Clerk, would you please read the final item number 9 into the record?
item number 9 is a petition from Deani Garcia Esquire requesting to amend Article 16 signs, Section 1604 illumination standards, Section 1605 prohibited signs, and Article 20, Section 2005 entitled Nonconforming Signs of the official zoning ordinance of the city of Providence.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. To be quite honest, this has been in our committee, out of our committee, in our committee, as you can tell, numerous times. What I'd like to do with this particular item is I would like to have a motion to pass this ordinance out of committee and send to the full council for a vote. I ask for a motion. Motion was made by Councilwoman Costello, seconded by Councilwoman Harris. All in favor? All right. Quick discussion. No, you gotta wait a second. The committee member has comment first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you said, this is certainly like the fourth or fifth version, I think. And I have two things that stand out that were in previous versions that are not in this one. One of them, it specified the like very singular locations that new electronic billboards could go. This version does not include that. There was another that specified removal. This version I find confusing. So before we move forward, I'd like to hear from the city solicitor on a legal opinion on this item.
Thank you, Council Miller. Councilman Gonzalez, step up to the mic, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to echo those points. I think this ordinance, which we've seen plenty of times in various different iterations, actually provides less clarity than what we've had in the past. I mean, there are so many clauses that we can point to. They're eliminating the clause that says limited to 5,000 nits during daylight hours and 500 nits between dusk and dawn. And additionally, there's a clause that's been introduced that says shall be responsive to ambient lighting in real time, but that's not necessarily defined in this ordinance. I think there's a lot of issues with this particular matter. There are lots of constituents also who have been reaching out about this, trying to get updates on this. There's a lot of opposition in our neighborhoods. And I think we would be doing the residents of our city a huge disservice if we actually pass this out of committee. I think we need to do a lot more due diligence on this. There needs to be a lot more accountability on what these clauses mean and the changes that were made. So I would respectfully urge you and the rest of the committee to consider continuing this matter so that way we can continue to do our due diligence on this on behalf of our constituents across the city. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilwoman Anthony. Turn your mic on, please.
Thank you. I concur with my colleagues, Councilwoman Miller and Councilman Goncalves. We have had so many people speak in opposition to this. You know, this is the fourth iteration, years of work, you know, by the planning staff until this particular version, which popped onto our agenda. I spoke at the meeting where we referred it to ordinance about the fact that this isn't right. This is an abuse of our system. I think they did this completely out of the blue, brand new ordinance after working with the planning staff, which on maybe a version that may have been palatable, and then completely just dissed that one and then introduced a brand new one. I just don't think this is right. And there are a ton of issues with this. For one thing, it's perpetuating a monopoly on our billboards. And I don't think that's right. You know, I think there's several things. One, the amendment fails to recognize that electronic message signs are allowed in numerous locations throughout the city and changes the illumination standards for all of them. That's just not right. It doesn't.
That's not true.
Oh, I think it is.
No.
I have consulted with the legal team and I think it is. So there's a real disagreement. This amendment isn't enforceable. There's so many provisions here where the There's absolutely no ability to measure the light. We don't even have any of those devices in our city. We don't have the personnel that are going to be able to do the test. This also purports to add off-premise electric message signs to the long list of signs prohibited in the ordinance, unless the electronic billboards fall within the certain criteria. The prohibited locations in section of the amendment 1605L1 is vague and unambiguous and therefore subject to legal challenge. The language providing that the billboards will remain subject to the provisions applicable to non-conforming uses is legally self-contradictory. The size limitations are not provided for a manner consistent with the remaining provisions of our zoning ordinance. While addressed last, this is an important legal issue because it does not appear that the amendment is a legitimate development incentive, which is how they've characterized this. It's opposed to contract zoning or bargaining. The amendment could open the door for other petitioners to bargain with the city for zoning consideration. There are so many issues with this. We should have let one of the prior, maybe the prior iterations go to council, but this is totally inappropriate for this one to go in this form to our council as a whole. I would ask that you refer it back so that we can dig in on this and look harder at what this is. It's a completely new ordinance. It isn't just a revision of what we've already discussed. It's completely new and it's not at all what this city should pass. So I would ask you to refer it back. Thank you.
Thank you. With that being said, I'd like to make a motion to pass this ordinance out of committee to the full council. Can I get a motion? I got a motion from Councilwoman Castillo and seconded by Councilwoman Harris. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? One nay. Two nays. 3 ayes and 2 nays, the ordinance passes. Hearing no further business before this committee, can I get a motion to adjourn? Motion made by Councilwoman Castillo, seconded by Councilwoman Harris. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.